If you've ever been placed into a new group or a class project, a work team, or even a social group, you might recognize this pattern. At first, everyone's polite. We're a little nervous, we're not totally sure what we're doing, we're watching each other and trying to figure it out. Then slowly, some tensions start to emerge. Things start to feel frustrating and unproductive. Over time, something shifts. We start to understand the personalities in the group, what people want, what they need, and how they tend to work, and we know what we're actually supposed to be doing and accomplishing and how we're going to collaborate to get things done. And pretty soon, we're just doing the work. Or if it's a social group, we're just vibing, having a good time. Eventually, the group ends, or maybe it takes on a different shape. These are actually common phases of team development, and they're surprisingly stable. You might be thinking, sheesh, I've never been a part of a group where things are just in sync and working the way you're talking about. You may have spent a lot of time in what's called the storming phase, which is important because that's often where groups feel the most frustrated and where we tend to focus most of our attention. Today we're asking the question, how do groups actually develop over time? One of the most well-known and widely used models for understanding group development comes from Bruce Tuckman, an American educational psychologist. Tuckman wasn't observing a single group or running just one experiment. His original 1965 paper was a theoretical review of existing research. He examined 55 empirical studies on group development across therapy groups, training groups, natural groups, and laboratory groups to look for consistent patterns in how groups shaped over time. Based on that synthesis, Tuckman proposed a developmental sequence that focused on both interpersonal dynamics and task-related behavior. And later, he suggested that one of the reasons this model was so influential was that it was simple and memorable, not necessarily because it perfectly captured every single group. What we now refer to as Tuckman's stages of team development describes a set of processes that groups often move through. Those processes include forming, storming, norming, performing, and then later added adjourning. It's commonly depicted in a graph where the time in a group is the x-axis and the performance of the group is the y-axis. Things kind of start moderately and then they get worse before they eventually start to get better. Before walking through the stages, it's important to say this. It's not a linear checklist. Groups don't just move neatly from one stage to the next and stay there. They often loop back, they stall out, they revisit earlier stages, especially when group members change or leave or the project becomes different. And that movement throughout this process isn't a failure, it's just part of how groups develop. So it might actually be better to illustrate the model as a cyclical sequence, recognizing that you could go from performing to storming in a snap. So what do these stages tend to feel like? Forming is all about orientation. People are trying to understand the task and understand each other. There's often a lot of politeness, uncertainty, and just watching and waiting. People might be more focused on just fitting in as opposed to getting things done. And as that initial newness wears off, groups often move into storming, which is where these tensions start to become visible. People experience frustration, disagreement, or confusion about roles and expectations. Differences in our approach to the task or our leadership style often surface, and emotionally, this stage can feel uncomfortable or draining. Storming is often interpreted as a sign that something is wrong. In many cases, it's just a sign that people are engaging seriously with that work and with one another. In norming, shared expectations are beginning to form. Our roles are becoming clearer, there's more trust and less second guessing. Our communication becomes more open, more authentic, and groups start to feel a bit more predictable, which tends to reduce our stress. Then comes performing. At this stage, the structure of the group becomes a resource rather than a barrier. So our energy shifts away from just figuring out how to do work together toward working on the work itself. Our roles are often flexible, the coordination feels smoother, and our attention is focused on what our goals are. In 1977, Tuckman revisited this model with colleague Marianne Jensen, and together they added a fifth stage, adjourning. Groups end, dissolve, transform, and that termination can be emotional, meaningful. They describe the ending of a group as an important part of the group's life cycle, not just an afterthought. One of the most helpful things this model offers isn't prediction or control, it's just reassurance. Many people and groups feel stuck in storming, and that's often where we pay most of our cognitive and emotional attention because that conflict and uncertainty demand our attention. The model is not perfect, it's remained useful because it helps people make sense of positive experiences rather than asking, what's wrong with this group? The model from Tuckman and later Jensen invites us to ask, where might we be in the process of development? And sometimes shifting how we're thinking about our group changes how we feel about it.